Real quick before we start the video today, make sure you watch until the end for instructions on how to enter the giveaway for this beautiful 2023 Brodie Smith Tour Series Zone OS in swirly ESP plastic. We'll draw the winner on Tuesday, May 2nd. Now, on to the video. Some of you found the statement, flight numbers don't matter, a bit contentious or controversial in our last video about destroyers. But let's actually talk about and understand why they don't matter. Or do they? Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs. Flight numbers, oh flight numbers, how they divide opinion across the disc golf spectrum. And they certainly generated a lot of discussion in the comments. My favorite suggestion was that we need a machine that could throw the disc the same every single time. While I'm no engineer, luckily someone else has actually done this for us. Enter Shane Whiten of Stuff Made Here, a fantastic YouTube channel that you should definitely subscribe to. He built a mechanized disc golf gauntlet of sorts, and as you can see, it was super easy to make and totally worked every single time. For about a billion reasons, we will not be trying to engineer our own throwing machine, but instead, let's dig into flight numbers, what they are, how they came to be, and what they're actually good for. It may surprise newer disc golfers to learn that we haven't always had flight numbers. Prior to 2009, we lived in the pre-flight number era, or PFN as those older discs are often called today. Innova began stamping their discs with flight numbers in 2009. The 4-number flight rating system has now been adopted by all major manufacturers, with Prodigy Discs being one of the most recent holdouts to finally succumb to pressure from players to print them on their discs. But what do these flight numbers actually stand for? If you don't know, I'll give you a quick explanation. And if you do know, skip ahead about 2 minutes and join us after we break it down. The 4 numbers in the flight number rating system represent 4 different flight characteristics: speed, glide, turn, and fade. The first number, speed, is defined by the aerodynamic shape of the disc, and both affects how fast it flies through the air, and also how fast you need to throw it to get the desired glide, turn, and fade. Different disc types have different speeds, with putters ranging from 1 to 3, approach discs from 3 to 4, mid-range from 4 to 6, fairway drivers from 6 to 10, and distance drivers from 10 to 14, although these do vary from one brand to another. The second number is glide. Glide represents how long a disc should remain aloft during flight. The more glide a disc has, in theory, the further it can fly, but also the more time it has to be affected by its stability, the wind, or other factors. Glide ranges from 1 to 7, 1 being the least and 7 the most. For the last 2 numbers, we're going to use a right-handed backhand throw as our point of reference. Simply reverse the directions that we've used for a left-handed backhand or a right-handed forehand. The third number is turn, or high-speed turn, and this is the tendency for a disc to move to the right at high speed or early in the disc's flight. Turn ranges from +1, which would be no turn, to -5, a lot of turn. Fade, or low-speed fade, is the tendency of a disc to move left at the end of its flight as it slows down. Fade ranges from 0, no fade, to 6, a lot of fade. The next important thing to know about flight numbers is that they are determined by the manufacturer, and first and foremost are used as a marketing tool. Manufacturers want you to choose a disc for a specific flight, and I have no doubt that manufacturers have every intention of making these flight numbers as accurate as possible. However, as all of you correctly pointed out in our previous video, not all players are created equal. We all throw differently, at different levels of power or angle, and we all throw in different conditions with different wind or at different elevations, and at least a little bit different on every single throw. There's something else that has a big impact on how a disc flies, and that is the plastic. For some manufacturers, translucent plastic is more overstable, while for others, there may be no discernible difference between translucent and opaque. Many players would agree that base plastic is more understable than premium plastic, and many would also agree that any disc with metal flakes in it is likely to be more overstable. However, there are always exceptions to these rules. For example, the base plastic K3 yarn that I throw from Castoplast is surprisingly more overstable than the premium K1 plastic yarn I have in my bag. And of course, they have the same flight numbers. One manufacturer taking a different approach here is MVP Disc Sports. There are two things unique about MVP's approach to flight numbers. The first is that they change the flight numbers based on the plastic and how it affects its flight. For example, here we have the Volt, an 8-speed fairway driver, and in Cosmic Neutron, Neutron, Proton, and Plasma, the flight numbers are 8, 5, -0.5, 2. However, if you pick up a Volt in Fission plastic, you'll find a slight difference, as it now has -1 turn instead of -0.5. You'll find the numbers change yet again for their base Electron plastic, getting even more turn at -2 and less fade at 1.5 now instead of 2. The second difference you may have already noticed is that they use 0.5 increments in their flight numbers, and they use them a lot. If you look through their lineup of discs, you'll see disc after disc with 0.5 increments on any of the 4 flight numbers. MVP says that, quote, "There are a lot of instances where a whole number just does not accurately describe a flight characteristic, and we have a number of discs that just don't fit a whole number rating. We strive for accuracy and consistency with our products, and because of this, we have chosen to include the potential for a 0.5 variance, as we believe it gets us closer to the actual characteristics of a disc." So how does MVP's approach differ from the originator of the flight number rating system, Innova? Well, if we look at this list of discs made by Innova from their own website, we have 114 discs in total, and just 3 have a 0.5 increment: the Wedge, the Rock X3, and the Cayman. Innova also takes a completely different approach to changing flight numbers based on plastic, in such that they don't. If you ask any longtime Innova thrower what the most overstable plastic is from Innova, they would probably tell you Metal Flake Champion or maybe Halo, depending on the disc. While if you asked the same question about the most understable plastic, they would probably choose G-Star or DX plastic, and they fly completely different in terms of stability. But as you can see, all of these plastics have the same flight numbers. Now, this isn't to say that one system is better or more accurate than another. In fact, nearly every manufacturer takes the same approach as Innova. Longtime Innova throwers know what to expect when they pick up a disc in specific plastics, but it takes time and experience to learn that about just one individual manufacturer, never mind about all of them. So to recap, every single manufacturer approaches flight numbers differently. So what are they actually good for? Flight numbers are useful with the right point of reference or context. When manufacturers design new discs, they compare that disc to the others that they already make, which means you can typically trust that flight numbers within a single manufacturer will be relatively accurate at describing the flights of those discs relative to each other. In other words, comparing apples to apples. Unfortunately, what happens for many players is they compare apples to oranges. They seek out a disc from one manufacturer with identical flight numbers to a disc from another, say a Destroyer from Innova compared to an Odin from Viking, in the hopes that they will fly the same. And as we saw in our last video, that may not necessarily be the case. But who can blame them? Flight numbers seem like the best tool for the job. In the end, there's no substitute for experience when it comes to understanding what to expect from a disc. So back to that original statement, flight numbers don't matter. Flight numbers don't matter if you're comparing one manufacturer's discs to another. Flight numbers do matter if you want to understand how a manufacturer intended that disc to fly compared to the existing discs in their lineup. Flight numbers don't matter if you're watching Ezra Aderhold throw a nuke and trying to decide if you can throw one the same way. Statistically speaking, almost no one throws as far or as fast as he does. Flight numbers do matter if you put them in the right context and you have the right point of reference. Most importantly, flight numbers do matter if you take them with a grain of salt. In closing, each disc has a unique feel and flight that you need to experience to fully understand. Videos like ours can tell you a lot, but they can't tell you everything about these discs, only how these specific ones compare to one another. If you're still watching, thanks for sticking around to the end. Here is how to enter the giveaway for this beautiful 2023 Brodie Smith Tour Series Zone OS. Simply like the video, subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment down below and tell us what disc you've thrown that flew the least like its flight numbers. Click here if you missed our first video in the Flight Numbers Don't Matter series, or click here to watch our most recent video on the Kastaplast Stig. For Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one.